I checked myself in the mirror one last time, smoothing the invisible wrinkles from my charcoal pencil skirt. The woman who stared back at me wasn't the same person who'd left this city 3 years ago with nothing but a half-empty suitcase and a shattered sense of self. That woman had been hollowed out, a mere outline of a person. This one, with her sharp bob cut, immaculate makeup, and eyes that no longer flinched at their own reflection, was different. Stronger. Rebuilt. "You've got this, Audrey Lancaster," I whispered to myself, the name still feeling like a reclamation on my tongue, even after the divorce had been finalized for over 2 years. My phone vibrated on the marble countertop, jolting me back to the present. Eliza's name flashed on the screen. "Please tell me you're not backing out," my friend's voice came through before I could even say hello. "I'm not backing out," I assured her, giving my reflection one final appraisal. "The meeting's at 10. "I'm just preparing myself." "You don't need to prepare. You run the damn department now, Audrey. They're coming to you." The weight of those words settled in my stomach like stones. 3 years ago, I had been a mid-level marketing executive at Davidson and Pierce, playing second fiddle to my then-husband, Graham. Now I was heading the acquisitions department at Thornfield Media, one of the largest publishing conglomerates in the country. And today, Davidson and Pierce were coming to pitch a partnership. "I know," I replied, gathering my portfolio and keys. "But it's not just any meeting, is it?" Eliza's sigh crackled through the speaker. "Have you heard anything about them?" I had. Of course I had. News traveled fast in our industry, especially when it involved someone as charismatic as Graham Lancaster. Or rather, Graham and his new wife, Vanessa. "They're doing well," I said tersely. "Apparently she's revolutionizing their digital strategy. Graham's been promoted to senior vice president. All the more reason to show them exactly who they're dealing with today," Eliza said, her voice taking on the fierce protective quality I'd come to rely on over the past 3 years. "Wear the red lipstick." I smiled despite myself, reaching for the tube of Chanel I'd deliberately avoided. "Already ahead of you." 30 minutes later, I stood in the elevator of the Thornfield building, watching the numbers climb and trying to ignore the flutter of anxiety in my chest. This was ridiculous. I'd earned my position through countless late nights, strategic decisions, and a talent for spotting trends before they emerged. I had nothing to prove to Graham or his new wife. And yet, the memory of our last encounter sliced through my carefully constructed composure. It had been at a mutual colleague's wedding, nearly a year after our separation. Graham had been there with Vanessa, already engaged by then, flaunting their relationship with the confidence of someone who believed he'd traded up. "Look at you," he'd said, his words slightly slurred from champagne. "Still living in Vanessa's shadow. You know that's all you ever were, right? A shadow of what I really wanted. A practice run." I'd walked away then, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing me cry. But his words had burrowed deep, feeding insecurities that had already taken root during our marriage's slow, painful collapse. The elevator doors slid open, revealing the gleaming reception area of Thornfield Media's executive floor. My floor. "Good morning, Ms. Lancaster," the receptionist greeted me with a warm smile. "The Davidson team is already in the Hawthorne conference room. Mr. Reed asked if you could join them when you arrive." My boss. Another unexpected ally in this new chapter of my life. "Thank you, Sandra. I'll head right in." I walked down the corridor, my heels clicking against the polished floor, each step cementing my resolve. This was my territory now. My achievement. No matter who sat across that conference table, I wouldn't let them diminish what I'd built. I paused outside the Hawthorne room, taking one deep, steadying breath. Through the glass wall, I could see Maxwell Reed at the head of the table, his imposing figure commanding attention as always. Beside him sat three representatives from Davidson and Pierce, two men in standard navy suits, and between them, a woman with sleek copper hair cascading over shoulders clad in cream silk. Vanessa. I pushed open the door, and four heads turned in my direction. Max's face broke into a welcoming smile. The two men, one of whom I recognized as Timothy Green, Davidson's CFO, looked politely attentive. And Vanessa, her expression flickered from professional interest to shock in the span of a heartbeat. "Ah, here she is," Max announced, rising to his feet. "Gentlemen, Ms. Chen, allow me to introduce Audrey Lancaster, our head of acquisitions and the person who will be overseeing this potential partnership from our end." I stepped forward, extending my hand first to Timothy. "A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Green. I've admired your work in transitioning Davidson's financial structure." He seemed momentarily surprised by the specific knowledge but recovered quickly. "Thank you, Ms. Lancaster. It's been a challenging but rewarding process." I moved on to the second man, who introduced himself as their legal counsel, Marcus Emerson. And then, inevitably, I stood before Vanessa Chen. "Ms. Chen," I said, my voice steady as I offered my hand. "I've heard impressive things about your digital innovation strategy." She took my hand, her perfectly manicured fingers cool against my palm. "Ms. Lancaster," she replied, her tone carefully neutral. "I didn't realize you'd moved to Thornfield." "Almost 2 years now," I said, taking my seat beside Max. "Shall we begin?" The meeting proceeded with surface-level professionalism, but I could feel Vanessa's gaze on me whenever I wasn't speaking. I presented Thornfield's expectations for the partnership with practiced ease, laying out our terms with the confidence that had become my armor. "These seem like aggressive targets," Timothy noted, flipping through the proposal I'd distributed. "We believe they're achievable with the right synergy," I responded. "Given Davidson's recent market performance and our distribution network, the numbers make sense." "I agree," Vanessa spoke up, surprising me. "But I'm concerned about the timeline for digital integration. 3 months seems optimistic." I met her eyes directly. "We've successfully implemented similar timelines with other partners. My team is prepared to provide full support throughout the transition." "Your team," she repeated, something unreadable flickering across her face. "I see." The rest of the meeting passed in a blur of technical discussions and cautious negotiations. When Max finally stood to indicate we were wrapping up, I felt a strange mixture of relief and disappointment. I'd been bracing for something, some acknowledgement of the elephant in the room, but it never came. "We'll review your proposal in detail and get back to you by the end of the week," Timothy said, collecting his papers. "Excellent," Max replied. "Audrey will be your point of contact moving forward. She has full authority to make decisions regarding this partnership." As they prepared to leave, I noticed Vanessa hanging back, ostensibly organizing her notes. When the others had stepped into the hallway, she looked up, those caramel-colored eyes fixing me with an intensity one remembered all too well from photos Graham had shown me during our marriage. "I didn't know," she said simply. "Didn't know what?" "That you'd be involved in this." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture that seemed oddly vulnerable. "Graham never mentioned you worked at Thornfield." The mention of his name sent a familiar pang through my chest. "Does Graham know you're here today?" A small, tight smile pulled at her lips. "He insisted on coming himself, actually." But our CEO thought a different approach might be more effective. I could just imagine what that meant. Graham's approach to business had always been aggressive, borderline antagonistic. A stark contrast to his charm in social settings. Well, I said, gathering my portfolio, I hope we can maintain a professional relationship, despite the complications. Vanessa nodded, then hesitated. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about how things ended between you two. The things he said at Daniel's wedding are in the past, I interrupted, not wanting to revisit that humiliation. We have a potential partnership to focus on now. She studied me for a moment longer, then nodded again. Of course. I'll be in touch, Ms. Lancaster. Audrey, I corrected automatically, then wondered why I'd offered that small intimacy. Audrey, she repeated. Then you must call me Vanessa. As I watched her walk away, I couldn't help but think about Graham's words. A shadow. That's all he thought I was. And now, by some twisted turn of fate, I found myself in a position of authority over the woman he'd replaced me with. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt a complicated knot of emotions I wasn't ready to untangle. Well, that was interesting, Max's voice broke through my thoughts as he reappeared in the doorway. You handled it remarkably well, considering. I raised an eyebrow. You knew? He had the grace to look slightly abashed. I did my homework before the meeting. Wanted to make sure you were comfortable with the assignment. And you didn't think to warn me? Would it have changed your approach? I considered this. No. Probably not. Then I made the right call. He clasped his hands together. Now, what's your read on their proposal? Do we move forward? And just like that, we were back to business. As if the universe hadn't just thrown me into a bizarre twist of fate. As if I wasn't still reeling from coming face to face with the woman who occupied the life I'd once believed was mine. Their numbers are solid, I said, compartmentalizing as I'd learned to do. But I want to push them on the digital timeline. Vanessa, Ms. Chen, is right to be concerned, but I also know they have the capacity to meet our schedule if properly motivated. Max nodded, seemingly satisfied with my professional assessment. I trust your judgment, Audrey. Handle it however you see fit. As he left me alone in the conference room, I sank back into my chair, finally allowing myself to process what had just happened. 3 years ago, Graham had shattered my world when he announced he was leaving me for Vanessa Chen, a brilliant digital marketing specialist he'd met at a conference. 2 years ago, he'd cemented my humiliation by publicly declaring me nothing but a shadow of the woman he truly wanted. And now, by some cosmic joke, that woman reported to me on a project that could make or break both our careers. Life had a strange way of coming full circle. I reached for my phone, needing to hear Eliza's voice, to ground myself in the present rather than spiral into the past. But before I could dial, a text message appeared on my screen. Unknown number, it really was good to see you today, Audrey. I hope we can work well together, despite everything. Vanessa. I stared at the message, unsure of how to respond or even if I should. What was her angle? Was this a genuine olive branch or some kind of manipulation? The uncertainty transported me back to those last devastating months of my marriage, when I'd constantly questioned everything: Graham's late nights, his sudden work trips, his gradually increasing emotional distance. By the time he'd finally admitted to the affair, I'd already been hollowed out by suspicion and gaslighting. Not this time, I muttered to myself, setting the phone aside without responding. Whatever game Vanessa Chen was playing, I wouldn't be drawn in so easily. I gathered my notes and headed back to my office, determined to focus on the work ahead rather than the ghosts of my past. The Davidson partnership was potentially lucrative for Thornfield, and I had a responsibility to see it through professionally, personal complications be damned. But as I settled behind my desk, I couldn't shake the image of Vanessa's face when she realized who I was. The shock, yes, but also something else. Something that looked almost like guilt. The week passed in a blur of meetings and deadlines. I threw myself into work with renewed intensity, as if by sheer professional excellence I could erase the echoes of Graham's voice in my head. You were just a shadow of what I really wanted. A practice run. Eliza insisted we meet for dinner on Friday, concerned by the terse updates I'd been sending her throughout the week. You're obsessing, she said bluntly, cutting into her steak at the upscale restaurant we'd chosen. This is exactly what he wants. I haven't even spoken to Graham, I protested. No, but you're letting him live rent-free in your head again. She pointed her fork at me accusingly. I watched you claw your way back from what he did to you. I'm not about to sit by while you let him drag you under again. I sighed, knowing she was right. It's not just him, though. It's seeing her. Working with her. It's complicated. Only if you make it complicated, Eliza retorted. She's just another business contact. Treat her accordingly. She texted me. I hadn't told anyone about the message yet. After the meeting, Eliza's eyebrows shot up. What did she say? I recited the message from memory, having read it a dozen times despite my determination to ignore it. Interesting, Eliza mused. Sounds like she's trying to clear the air. Or setting me up for something. Eliza put down her fork, fixing me with a stern look. Audrey, not everyone plays games like Graham did. You know that, right? I did know that. Intellectually, at least. But 3 years of emotional manipulation had left its mark, making me second-guess even the most straightforward interactions. I just don't know what to make of her, I admitted. She seemed genuinely uncomfortable when she realized who I was. Almost apologetic. Maybe she is, Eliza suggested. Have you considered that she might not be the villain in this story? I hadn't, not really. It had been easier to cast Vanessa as the other woman, the homewrecker, the embodiment of everything I wasn't. But seeing her in person, watching her navigate the awkwardness of our situation with a certain grace, had complicated my neat narrative. I don't know what to think anymore, I said honestly. Well, while you figure it out, don't forget to actually respond to their proposal, Eliza reminded me. Monday, right? I nodded, grateful for the redirect to safer, more professional territory. I'll call Timothy on Monday morning. The terms are mostly acceptable, but I want to push back on a few points. And will you be working directly with Vanessa on this? The question I'd been avoiding all week. Probably. She's heading their digital strategy, which is a significant component of the partnership. Eliza studied me for a moment, then reached across the table to squeeze my hand. Just remember who you are now, Audrey. Not who he told you you were. Later that night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Eliza's words echoed in my mind. Who was I now? 3 years ago, Graham's betrayal had stripped me down to nothing, forcing me to rebuild from scratch. I'd left our shared apartment, our mutual friends, even the city we'd made our home, determined to redefine myself away from his shadow. The irony wasn't lost on me. He had called me a shadow, yet I was the one who had stepped into the light, while he remained tethered to the same company, the same social circles, the same patterns. On impulse, I reached for my phone and pulled up Vanessa's message. Before I could overthink it, I typed out a response. Thank you for reaching out. I appreciate your professionalism. Let's arrange a call on Monday to discuss the digital integration timeline. Simple. Direct. Professional. I hit send before I could change my mind, then set my phone aside and tried to sleep. Monday morning arrived with a clarity I hadn't expected. I'd spent the weekend mulling over the Davidson proposal, identifying points of negotiation, and strategizing approaches. By the time I arrived at the office, I felt centered in a way I hadn't since the initial meeting. Timothy Green had already left a voicemail expressing Davidson's interest in moving forward, pending some adjustments to the terms. I dialed his number, prepared for a productive negotiation. "Ms. Lancaster," he greeted me. "I'm glad you called. I've just been reviewing your proposal with our team. I hope you found the terms agreeable, with some room for discussion," I replied, falling easily into the rhythm of business talk. "For the most part, yes. However, Vanessa has raised some concerns about the digital integration timeline that I think warrant further exploration." As if summoned by her name, my phone buzzed with a text. "Vanessa again, just got out of my meeting with Timothy. I'd like to discuss the integration concerns directly if you're available." Actually, I said to Timothy, "Ms. Chin just reached out about discussing those concerns directly. Would you be comfortable with us handling that aspect of the negotiation?" There was a brief pause. "Of course. Vanessa has full authority on the digital strategy. Anything you two agree upon will have my support." After ending the call with Timothy, I texted Vanessa back, suggesting a meeting at a cafe near our offices the following day. Professional but neutral territory. Her response came almost immediately, "Perfect. See you at 10. I spent the rest of the day buried in work, trying not to overthink the upcoming meeting. Yet as I reviewed documents and attended other meetings, my mind kept circling back to Vanessa. To Graham. To the surreal twist that had brought us all to this point. By Tuesday morning, I'd worked myself into a state of hyper-awareness, every nerve ending on alert as I pushed open the door to Café Lorraine. Vanessa was already there, seated at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee in front of her. "I hope you still take it with 1 sugar, no cream," she said as I approached, pushing one of the cups toward me. I faltered, caught off guard by this knowledge of my preference. "How did you?" "Graham mentioned it once," she explained, looking slightly embarrassed. "He was criticizing my 3-sugar habit, saying you were the only person he knew who took coffee properly." The casual mention of my ex-husband's name sent an unexpected pang through me. Not pain, exactly, but a dull recognition of loss. "Thank you," I said, taking the offered cup. "Yes, that's still how I take it." An awkward silence descended as we both sipped our coffee, the weight of our complicated connection hovering between us. "I want to be direct," Vanessa said finally. "The digital integration timeline in your proposal is ambitious but not impossible. My concerns are genuine. I'd have the same reservations with any partner, but I'm also aware that our personal situation complicates matters." I appreciated her frankness. "I understand your concerns. And I assure you, the timeline reflects Thornfield's actual expectations, not any personal agenda." She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "I believe you. Which is why I wanted to meet like this, away from the offices and the formal negotiations." "To discuss the timeline?" "Partly." She took another sip of her coffee. "And partly to address the elephant in the room. Graham doesn't know about this partnership yet." That caught me by surprise. "Why not? He's a senior VP now." Surely he'd be involved in a decision this significant. Vanessa's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. He's been sidelined on this project. There were concerns about his approach. I remembered what she'd said in our first meeting, that Graham had wanted to handle the partnership himself. What kind of concerns? She hesitated, clearly weighing how much to reveal. Graham can be aggressive in negotiations. Sometimes to the point of sabotaging potentially valuable relationships. The description matched the Graham I'd known toward the end of our marriage, increasingly combative, prone to burning bridges when he felt challenged. But hearing it from his new wife sent a chill through me. Is that why you reached out? I asked, suddenly suspicious. Are you trying to manage him by managing me? Vanessa's eyes widened. No, Audrey. I reached out because I respect your position and I want this partnership to succeed. She paused, then added more softly, and because I owe you the courtesy of honesty, given our history. I wanted to believe her. Something in her direct gaze, the straightforward way she addressed our situation, made me want to trust her words. But 3 years of second-guessing myself didn't disappear overnight. I appreciate the honesty, I said finally. So let's be honest about the timeline. What specifically concerns you? We spent the next hour in detailed discussion of the digital integration process, identifying potential bottlenecks and solutions. Vanessa was undeniably brilliant, her understanding of digital ecosystems both broad and nuanced. By the time we'd finished our second coffee, we'd reached a compromise that satisfied both our concerns. I think we have a solid plan, I said, reviewing my notes. I'll draft an updated proposal and send it to you and Timothy by end of day. Vanessa nodded, gathering her things. Then she hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of her leather portfolio. There's something else you should know, Audrey. The shift in her tone sent a warning signal through me. What is it? Graham will find out about this partnership eventually. When he does. She looked up, meeting my eyes directly. He won't be happy that you're involved. A cold weight settled in my stomach. Because of me specifically? Because of what you represent now. She chose her words carefully. Your success at Thornfield challenges a narrative he's constructed about you, about your marriage, about why he left. The shadow. A practice run. The words echoed in my mind. I see. I kept my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. Thank you for the warning. Vanessa reached across the table, her fingers stopping just short of touching mine. I'm not warning you because I think you need protection. I'm telling you because I believe in transparency. And because I want you to know that whatever he says or does, it's not about you, it's about him. As I looked into her eyes, I saw something unexpected, a weary knowledge, an understanding that felt almost like solidarity. Are you happy, Vanessa? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Surprise flickered across her face, then a carefully composed neutrality. That's a complicated question. I suppose it is. She stood, smoothing her skirt with practiced precision. I'll look for your updated proposal. Thank you for meeting me, Audrey. As I watched her walk away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between us. Not friendship, certainly, but perhaps a mutual recognition, two women navigating the emotional minefield one man had laid for us both. Back at the office, I threw myself into drafting the updated proposal, determined to maintain the professional momentum of our meeting. But Vanessa's words about Graham kept circling in my mind, sparking questions I thought I'd put to rest years ago. By evening, I'd sent the revised document to both Timothy and Vanessa, copied Max on the correspondence, and was preparing to head home when my office phone rang. Audrey Lancaster speaking. Ms. Lancaster. A male voice I didn't immediately recognize. This is Dominic Evans, CEO of Davidson and Pierce. I straightened in my chair. Mr. Evans. This is unexpected. I hope not unwelcome. I've just reviewed the revised partnership proposal you sent to Timothy and Vanessa. I'm impressed with the compromise you've reached on the digital timeline. Thank you. Vanessa had valid concerns, and we found a middle ground that serves both companies. There was a pause. I understand you have a prior connection to Davidson and Pierce. My grip tightened on the receiver. If you're referring to my previous marriage to Graham Lancaster, then yes. I am. His tone remained measured. I want to assure you that this connection has no bearing on our interest in partnering with Thornfield, nor on my confidence in your ability to lead this project professionally. The explicit acknowledgement caught me off guard. I appreciate that, Mr. Evans. That said, he continued, I feel it's important to be transparent about internal dynamics that might affect our partnership. Graham Lancaster will be informed of this project tomorrow morning. My pulse quickened. I see. I don't anticipate any issues, but should any arise, I want you to know that Davidson and Pierce stands firmly behind this partnership and the terms you've negotiated with Vanessa and Timothy. The subtext was clear: if Graham caused problems, Evans would deal with it. Thank you for the transparency, Mr. Evans. I'm committed to making this partnership successful, regardless of any personal complications. After hanging up, I sat motionless, processing the conversation. Evans' call had been both reassuring and alarming, a vote of confidence in my professionalism, but also an acknowledgement that Graham might react poorly to my involvement. As if on cue, my cell phone vibrated with a text from Vanessa. Vanessa, Graham's been called to a meeting with Evans tomorrow at 9 a.m. Just thought you should know. The simple heads-up felt like another small alliance forming between us, a shared preparation for whatever storm might be coming. I texted back, thank you. I hope it goes smoothly. Her response came quickly, it won't. But we'll handle it. We. The word lingered in my mind as I drove home, an unexpected bridge between two women who should, by all conventional wisdom, be enemies. The next day passed in an unusually quiet manner. I kept expecting some fallout from Graham's meeting with Evans, an angry call, a confrontational email, something, but by the time I left the office, nothing had materialized. Maybe he's taking it better than we expected, Eliza suggested when I called her on my way home. Graham? Taking something better than expected? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. That would be a first. People change, Audrey. Not that much. I sighed, guiding my car through the evening traffic. I don't know. Maybe Evans shut him down so completely that he's regrouping. Or maybe he genuinely doesn't care that you're involved. The suggestion stung more than I wanted to admit. Maybe. Would that be worse? If he didn't care at all? I considered this as I waited at a red light. I don't know. I mean, I don't want him to care in the sense of still having feelings for me. That ship sailed a long time ago. But the idea that he could be completely indifferent bruises the ego a bit? Something like that. I laughed weakly. God, that's pathetic, isn't it? After everything he did, I still want him to at least acknowledge my existence. It's not pathetic, it's human, Eliza said gently. Just don't let it consume you, okay? You've come too far to backslide now. I promised her I wouldn't, but as I entered my empty apartment that evening, I couldn't shake the strange anticlimax of the day. Part of me had been bracing for confrontation, preparing retorts and establishing boundaries. Without that release of tension, I felt oddly unmoored. I was halfway through a glass of wine and a mindless cooking show when my doorbell rang. Glancing at the clock, 9:17 p.m., I frowned. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw a familiar copper-haired figure standing in the hallway, her posture tense. Vanessa. I opened the door, confusion and concern mingling as I took in her disheveled appearance. Her usually immaculate hair was windblown, her eyes reddened. "I'm sorry to show up like this," she said before I could speak. "I didn't know where else to go." "What happened?" I stepped aside to let her in, my personal boundaries momentarily overridden by the distress evident in her face. She moved past me into the apartment, then turned, her composure visibly cracking. "Graham happened. He found out about our meeting yesterday. About the compromise we reached without his input. And he didn't take it well, I guessed, closing the door." Vanessa let out a bitter laugh. "That's putting it mildly. He accused me of betraying him. Of conspiring with you against him." "Conspiring?" I echoed, incredulous. "He's convinced himself that you orchestrated this whole partnership to undermine him. That you're using your position at Thornfield to exact some kind of revenge. And now that I've sided with you by agreeing to your terms without his involvement." She shook her head. "He completely lost it." I gestured toward the living room. "Sit down. Would you like some wine? Or something stronger?" "Wine would be good, thank you." She sank onto my couch, looking suddenly small and vulnerable. As I poured her a glass, I tried to process what was happening. Vanessa Chen, the woman Graham had left me for, the woman I'd spent 3 years resenting from a distance, was sitting in my living room, seeking refuge from the very man who had once been my husband. "Here." I handed her the wine, then took a seat in the armchair opposite her. "Now tell me what really happened." Vanessa took a long sip before meeting my eyes. "He threatened to derail the partnership. Said he'd go over Evan's head to the board if necessary. When I pointed out that it would harm his own career, he said he didn't care, that he wouldn't let you win." A chill ran through me. "Win? This isn't a competition. It's a business partnership that makes sense for both companies. I know that. Evans knows that. Even Graham knows that, on some level." She set her glass down. "But this isn't about business for him. It's about control. About the narrative." "What narrative?" Her gaze dropped to her hands. "That you were the problem in your marriage. That you were holding him back. That he needed someone who matched his ambition, his vision." Each word was like a knife, reopening wounds I thought had healed. "And you believed him?" "At first, yes." She looked up, her expression raw with an honesty I hadn't expected. "I was newer to the industry. He was charismatic, successful, full of big ideas. When he talked about his marriage, he painted a picture of a wife who didn't understand his drive, who was content to remain in his shadow." A shadow. There it was again, that word that had haunted me for years. "And now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Now I see the pattern." Her fingers traced the rim of her wineglass. "The way he needs to diminish others to feel powerful. The way he twists every situation to make himself the hero, the victim, or both." I took a long sip of my own wine, letting her words sink in. "Why are you telling me this, Vanessa? Why come here, of all places?" She met my gaze directly. Because you deserve to know the truth. Because I realized tonight, watching him rage about you, that I've been complicit in a lie. And because. She hesitated. Because I think you might be the only person who truly understands what I'm going through. The irony wasn't lost on me. 3 years ago, I'd been the one falling apart while she presumably built a life with Graham. Now our positions were reversed, in a way neither of us could have anticipated. Does Evans know what happened tonight? I asked, shifting to a more practical concern. She nodded. I called him before coming here. He's fully committed to the partnership, with or without Graham's support. That's something, at least. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. So what happens now? Professionally? We move forward with the partnership as planned. Graham can rage all he wants, but Evans won't let him sabotage a valuable opportunity. Vanessa paused. Personally? I don't know. The admission hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. Are you going home tonight? I asked carefully. Her laugh was hollow. I don't think that would be wise. I've booked a hotel room downtown. You don't have to do that, I heard myself say, surprising us both. I have a guest room. Vanessa's eyes widened. Audrey, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. But it's late, and you're upset, and. I struggled to articulate the strange sense of solidarity I felt. No one should be alone after a night like this. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Thank you. I won't forget this. As I showed her to the guest room, providing fresh towels and a spare toothbrush, the surreality of the situation wasn't lost on me. My ex-husband's wife, the woman who, by all conventional narratives, should be my sworn enemy, was staying in my home, seeking sanctuary from the very man who had once promised to love and cherish me. Life had a strange way of reshuffling the deck we were dealt. Later, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me to this point. 3 years ago, I'd been shattered, rebuilding my life piece by painful piece. Now I was in a position of unexpected power, not just professionally, but personally. The woman Graham had chosen over me was now seeking my help, my understanding. The victory felt hollow, though. I didn't want Vanessa to suffer, didn't want to see another woman go through the slow, excruciating process of discovering Graham's true nature. Whatever resentment I had harbored toward her over the years had begun to dissolve, replaced by a complicated empathy. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Graham, the first direct communication I'd had with him in nearly 2 years. Graham, so this is your game? Turning my wife against me? You always were more calculated than people gave you credit for. I stared at the message, the blue light of my phone screen cutting through the darkness of my bedroom. 3 years of therapy had taught me to recognize the familiar hooks in his words, the accusation designed to make me defensive, the backhanded compliment meant to throw me off balance, the implicit assumption that everything must revolve around him. 3 years ago, I would have responded immediately, desperate to correct his misperception, to prove I wasn't the villain he painted me to be. Now, I simply set the phone on my nightstand and turned away. Morning arrived with the soft patter of rain against my windows. I found Vanessa already dressed in yesterday's clothes, her copper hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, nursing a cup of coffee at my kitchen island. I hope you don't mind, she said, gesturing to the coffee maker. I'm an early riser. Not at all. I poured myself a cup, the familiar ritual grounding me. Graham texted me last night. Her shoulders tensed visibly. What did he say? I showed her the message, watching as something between resignation and anger flickered across her face. "Classic Graham," she said finally. "Everything must be a conspiracy against him. The alternative, accepting responsibility for his own actions, is inconceivable." The bitterness in her voice mirrored my own thoughts with such precision that I found myself smiling despite the circumstances. "What?" she asked, catching my expression. "Nothing. It's just strange to hear my own thoughts coming from your mouth." Vanessa's lips curved into a sad smile. "I suppose that's what happens when you love the same narcissist." Love. Present tense. The word hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. "Do you still?" I asked quietly. "Love him?" She traced the rim of her coffee cup, considering the question with a thoughtfulness I hadn't expected. "I love who I thought he was," she said finally. "The man who seemed so confident, so visionary. The man who made me believe I was special." She looked up, meeting my gaze directly. "But that man doesn't exist." "Maybe he never did." I nodded, understanding the painful distinction. "That's the hardest part, isn't it? Mourning someone who was never real in the first place." "Yes." A single tear slid down her cheek, which she quickly brushed away. I really believed I was different. That what happened with you was about compatibility, not character. I was so naive." The confession, vulnerable, honest, painful, dissolved the last of my resentment toward her. In its place grew something unexpected, compassion. "I believed it too," I admitted. "I spent years thinking I was the problem, that I hadn't been enough. It took a long time to realize the truth, that Graham would never allow anyone to be his equal. Not me. Not you. Not anyone."